Hey guys, John here from ContraBIM with another ARCHICAD tutorial video. I recently sent out a survey to our ContraBIM subscribers asking what type of tutorials they wanted to see next, and one of the responses was on a spider curtain wall system, which I thought would be an interesting tutorial that we can quickly just go through and build up from scratch. So before we jump into ARCHICAD, I thought it would be worthwhile taking a quick look here on Google and just kind of doing a quick overview of some different types of spider curtain wall systems. They're also referred to as point supported curtain wall systems, and there's really a lot of different variations. So I thought it would just be fun to kind of point out a few different styles, and then we'll go into ARCHICAD and build up one from scratch. So really the whole nature of a spider curtain wall system is these connections here that really kind of look like a spider, hence the name. And there's really a lot of different ways of setting this up. So in this particular image here, this is called, it's really like I've seen it referred to as like a glazed buttress type system, where you have a glass fin running vertically behind the main face of the facade, and so that adds some structural support to the system. You can see here that it's mounted off the slab at the bottom and probably up on the next level as well. So that would be one style of point supported spider connection curtain wall system. This would be maybe another style, which is like more of a metal fin type point supported system, where you can see off the main structural face of the building we have all these additional supports coming out with these kind of fancy fins, and then from that we have our spider connection mounted and supporting the face of the facade. So that's a quite interesting look to a glazed curtain wall system, and yeah, that would be one that would be pretty fun to model up. Here is another variation, which is more of like a tension cabling type system, where you can see there's a cable running vertically as well as horizontally, and there's a lot of different variations that you can find based off this tensioning type system. Sometimes you'll see kind of like a hybrid type system here, where we have a tube steel support running vertically or at an angle in this particular case, and then you can also see that there's some tension cabling running on the front and the back as well. So a lot of different ways of setting up these point supported systems. There would be another glass fin type style, but with that, let's go ahead and jump into ARCHICAD now, and we will start building up a new curtain wall system from scratch. So, all right, here we are. Let's start by pulling up our curtain wall tool. And I think right now we have this set to just like our generic curtain wall favorite. So we'll start with this, and then let's kind of, we'll strip this down to a bare bones curtain wall, and then we'll start building it up from scratch here. So first step is I want to point out that under our main tab here under our curtain wall system, we do have a member placement setting here, where we can go through and place junctions either one by one or at all grid points. So this would be one of the main settings that's going to control how we add junctions to our curtain wall. We'll start with a one by one to begin with, and I also like usually placing these inside the boundary, having our entire curtain wall system inside the boundary line that we are drawing. Okay, so next step here is let's go into our scheme settings. So we can see that there's quite a substantial scheme already set up, and with being under our scheme here, if we go in, we can strip this down to just going to an empty scheme, and so you'll notice that that clears out our scheme, and now we have essentially just a deleted panel. Let's change that over to our main panel, and then we can make some adjustments here on our columns. We'll set this to a fixed size as a width, so maybe let's go 8 feet for our width. Let's do a fixed size for our height, so how about 4 feet? So we're doing some nice big panels here, 4 feet, not 4 inches. And okay, so there we go. We have our panel sizes. And right now we just have our panels. We'll leave that for now, but let's go over to our frames and we'll make some quick adjustments here as well. So our corner frame, we can set this up as to be an invisible corner frame to begin with. That should be fine. Typically when we have these point supported glazed systems, we have about a 1/2 inch spacing at the gaps here. So if we set this to a 1/4 inch from our center reference line. That'll give us a 1/2 inch gap. Our boundary frame here, this would probably be too large of a frame. There's certainly a lot of flexibility that we could have, but I want to set this up more of like a kind of like a shoe, I would say, where we have the glass kind of being set into a frame that is much wider than it is thick. So we can set this to maybe just 3 inches thick. We'll set our glass to be right in the middle of that by setting this half the distance. Let's see here, 3 inches, 1.5 inches. Okay, there we go. And then we can set this maybe 1.25 inches. And if we're 5 inches width there, let's set this to 2 inches. And there we go. That's looking much more like a shoe. And I'm liking the look of that. Our mullion frame here, let's see. Let's add in, let's just set these two invisible for right now. We'll come back in later and we'll add maybe a little bit of a sealant between our panels. But let's just see what we get with this for now. Our mullion frame is always going to be the vertical edge here. Our transom frame is going to be our horizontal edge. And let's set this to 1/4 inch to begin with in each direction. And let's start modeling this in and see what we get. Okay, so with this, we'll just set this to like an even 40 feet. 40 feet. We'll hit enter. We'll select our curtain wall here. We can see that it's got an offset to our panel center. So let's just zero this out as well to bring that in line. Let's check our height here. So it's set to 10 feet. Let's change this to 20 feet. 20 feet. Okay. And we'll do an F5 to pull this up in 3D. Okay, so we're seeing we have our boundary frame coming through. Let's turn on a section, and there we go. We can see that shoe type frame there, so that looks very nice. But right now we are not seeing any sort of, when we select it, we can see that we can get some notches here in our boundary frame, but we don't have any sort of spacing in the middle, even though that we had set the spacing there on our mullion frame and our transom frame. Well, why is that? Well, it's because we never actually added those in to our actual panels here. So we need to add in a mullion frame here vertically, and then a transom frame here horizontally, and that will create those gaps for us there. So now when we hit OK, we can see that yes, we do have those 1/2 inch gaps now, set by 1/4 inch on each side. So at this point, we can really start going through, and while being in 3D, we can go into our edit mode on our curtain wall, and we can pull up our junction settings here, and we can actually go in and let's check the settings of this junction here first. So we can see that we have it set to 1 foot. This is actually from the center point out, so that would be a 2 foot overall. We have 4 inches diameter here, or sorry, 4 inch radius, so that would be an 8 inch total radius. And then same thing with our little point supported, that's 2 inches, so that'd be 4 inches total. Let's just leave all these settings as they are, but let's come in here now, and while being in 3D, we can zoom in here. If we click right on the center point, we should get the option of actually adding in those points. So we're clicking here, and what we're looking for is we want to get this little eyeball. So when we click again, we can see that we've now added that spider point to this, and that's really quite a large connection there. And I actually intended it to be on the other side. So once you place one, you can actually flip it by selecting the connection and flipping it over here. But let's get a little bit more realistic size here, because that's certainly a huge connection. So let's go back in. Let's maybe reduce this down to, I don't know, if we want it to be 1.5 inch total, we could set this as 0.75. If we wanted this center to be maybe an inch and maybe 2 inches, we'll set this to 1 inch. And then we can see how large this is right now. Let's reduce this down maybe to 6 inches. And then our thickness on there, that's probably way too thick. Let's go maybe, I don't know, 1/2 inch to begin with. And then we can also control the depth of our center point here by changing this setting here. So if we wanted to be a foot, we could set it as a foot. We'll bring it back to 2 inches now just for a starting point. And let's see how this looks. Okay, so that's actually looking, I would say, quite a bit better there. And yeah, I'm starting to like that a little bit more. And so with this, we could actually go in and we could pick up the settings of this, and we could go around and just kind of start dropping these in wherever we wanted. So that would be one method. The other method is we could actually go back into our curtain wall settings here. We go back to our junctions, and right now we'll notice that this is all reset back to those base settings. So let's go in and quickly change these to match what we had. So 0.75, we can do 1 inch, 6 inches, 1/2 inch, and I think that's about what we had everywhere. And so now if we wanted to apply this across the board, we go back to our curtain wall settings and apply this at all grid points. So we hit this there, and now we've added all of these in, including at our boundaries here, which is probably not what we wanted. We can actually see that our boundaries, it actually only created a two point supported boundary support there, so that's probably not what we want either. But if we go through, we can turn off everything except for our junctions, and then we can simply just do a selection and grab the rest of these here and simply delete them, and we'll bring back everything else, and there we go. So we are starting to set this up, and yeah, I'm starting to like this. This is looking a little bit more realistic now. At any point, we should be able to just go back in, select all of our junctions here. If we wanted to make any corrections, maybe bumping this up, say to 8 inches and 1 inch, we can make some quick adjustments here across the board, and yeah, that's pretty easy once we've set this up. So let's continue on now. So if we wanted to add in some supports in the back here, we could go ahead and start adjusting. Well, there's several different ways we could do that. One, we could obviously just model in a structural support in the back. And let's go here to 2D. I want to just check our 2D settings here real quick. Let's exit our edit mode. And so right now we're getting this little notch point here that's kind of representing a bit of that we have a connection there. But let's go in and let's check our floor plan display, because I think we can really crank up this to be projected, and let's change all of these to projected, and let's see if that increases our realism, which it does quite a bit there. So I'm definitely liking the look of that much more than how we had that set up before. So okay, so with this, let's go in now and let's add in some structural supports in the back. And I'm thinking like some tube steel support members. So let's go into our scheme settings here. We'll go to our frames, and if we wanted to add this to our vertical panel there, we would be adding this to our mullion frame. So instead of going with our invisible here, let's set this to, let's check our settings here for a profiled butt glazed frame. So that creates the option here that we can select one single profile. So in this case, we see a steel W-beam. We did have a few other options here. We could also do a profiled frame. That gives us two options. So we could do a frame type in the back as well as a cap in the front. But I think this profiled butt glaze system is probably going to be a little better for us. So let's go in and see if we can find any members that might work well for us. This one, that tube steel 4x4, is probably pretty close. Here we can see some different types of curtain wall panels. I'm not really liking any of those at the moment. So let's go in and we'll just create our own, let's do like a round tube steel type frame. So, okay, well I hit okay on that. So we had it by default our W column there. So if we see that in 3D, obviously that's not really what we want, but let's go in, we'll make the adjustment, and then we'll reassign that. So let's go to our profile manager now. We will create a new profile. So I'm going to call this curtain wall tube steel frame. We'll hit OK. Let's go in and let's do a round profile here. So let's set this maybe to, we'll do 4 inches radius. We can take our fill and just create a section in here. Let's change this out to be, I'm looking for aluminum here. Let's find, do we have an aluminum? Maybe not. But we can set this to metal trim or metal framing. That's fine. And then let's just do an offset here. We'll create this as a bit of a hollow section, and then we'll grab our fill, magic wand that center part, and delete it out. So okay, there we go. We are now getting a little bit closer. We can always go in here and override our surface for that one by selecting our fill, override our surface, and let's just change this to like an aluminum. So metal finish aluminum, that'll work. Okay, and let's set this as a column. I think it'll pick this up regardless, but we'll just apply this to everything, and let's just hit save. And so now we have a new section here. So let's go back to our 3D. We can go into our settings. Let's switch this out to our curtain wall tube steel frame, hit OK, and there we go. We can see that we've now added in that tube steel frame, but it's still right in the center there. So let's go ahead and give this a bit of an offset. So with it selected, we'll just drag it down. Let's offset it. We'll go 1'4" as an offset. We'll set it nice and far back. Okay, and with this, we'll hit save. We'll go back to 3D, and there we go. So we've now offset it. One thing that you'll notice here, though, is our gap increased quite a bit there. So let's go into our settings and see why that is. So once again, in our frames under our mullion, we have a new setting here for our frame type and our spacing to our panels. So you'll notice down here at the bottom, we have 8 inches as our total width, which is correct because we set it that size. But you'll notice here our glass overhang from the edge is only set to 1 inch 3/16. So if we wanted to get that back down to our 1/2 inch total, we would need to set this as 3.75. And so that way we would have a 1/4 inch from each side of our support in the back. So let's also set this to our 1 inch thick glass as we had it in our settings there, and hit OK. And there we go. We've now started to shrink that up, which is great. And yeah, we're starting to create a bit of a support here. So we can always add to this as well. Say if we wanted to make some adjustments on our cut lengths on those elements, we could go back in, and we have a setting here under our mullion frame to go in, and if we just set these to manual, it will actually go in and instead of cutting it at the frames, it's going to cut that at the overall boundary. So you'll notice that made these slight adjustments there. So all we would have to do there is just add like a base plate assembly to that particular tube steel frame. But let's go back in and let's connect our spider connections back to that particular support here. So from our center point of our spider connection, we need to bring this back at least 10 inches, probably a little bit more than that. I'd probably say like 10, almost 11 inches to be safe. And so we can make those adjustments by going back in to our junction settings, and let's set this to 11 inches. So now we have a longer frame, and oh, well, we can see that did not quite update for us. So we need to do this in the other method here by going into our edit settings. We'll grab all of our junctions, and then we'll make the adjustment here. So 11 inches, there we go. Okay, so now we have brought those back, looking much better. And okay, so I'd say to add just a little bit more realism to this, we can go in and instead of having these actual gaps here, let's create a little bit of like a sealant strip there. And we can actually do that directly from within our curtain wall tube steel frame profile. So we'll go in here, and once again we have a 1 inch thick glass panel. So I'm going to set this in the Y direction as -1 inch. In our X direction, we will set this as 0.5 inches. Okay, and then we will just center this up. And I think this, if we bring this right to the center here, I think that should be right in alignment with our glass. We'll have to test and see. But then last step here is let's just change this to, we can set this as like a recycled material and override the color to just be like a pure black. I think would be a good color for this. So we'll hit save. Let's go back to 3D and check to see if that came through in the right location. Well, it didn't quite do that. So we could just go in and make the adjustment either on this side here, or we go into our panel. And I think if we set this as part of our frame, I think if we zeroed this out here, I think that would actually align it for us. So, okay, there we go. We can see that that is now fully in line. So that might take a little bit of playing around with. One thing I really don't like with this is that contour pen. So let's go in and make an adjustment there. So the contour pens for our frames now are actually going to be in this panel right here. So we'll click over one more, and let's just make that kind of the light blue color there. So that's looking much better. And okay, so last step here is probably we need to add in our sealant running in the other direction. So we can actually go in and let's just duplicate this setting here. So we can change this as curtain wall tube, or we'll just call this curtain wall sealant horizontal, if I could spell. All right. And so we can edit this, and yeah, we got some options here. We could actually I think we're actually in the right orientation as is, but say if we wanted to add in like a cable instead to run directly through this, we could actually do that as well by simply just we can create a new little radius here. So let's just set this as like a if we set this to maybe like 3/8 inch, so we have a 3/4 inch radius. Let's set this back from our face of glass. If we go maybe halfway, so maybe like 6 inches might be interesting. And yeah, let's pick up our settings here. We'll inject, or we'll just place it right there. We'll delete out this one. And so now we'll get rid of that arc. We'll want to override this. I don't think we really have much of a cable railing type that we can use here, but that's one that we could probably bring in at some point. But yeah, let's just leave it as metal framing for the moment. And let's hit save. And I'm going to rename this from curtain wall cable plus, or horizontal. Okay. All right, so let's see how this looks by adding that in the other direction. So, okay, we've already hit save. We'll go back to 3D now, and let's go in and let's change our transom, which is our horizontal direction. And once again, we'll go back into our profile butt glazed. Let's go in and find our curtain wall cable horizontal. Okay, we will set our same offsets here. In this case, we had 3/4 inch total width. So we'd actually want to just set this at 1/8 inch to maintain that 1/4 inch gap, because if we subtract 1/8 from 3/4 total from each side, that should do it for us. And okay, let's see what we get. All right, so that's not looking too bad here. We do have a little bit of an issue where we don't have, we actually have our intersection priority a little bit. We need to set that here. So this one is low. Let's crank this up maybe to 12. And I think that corrects that for us. So, okay, last step here is I can't stand that brown color. So let's make an adjustment and we'll set that to our blue. Okay, so there we go. We now have kind of a nice little cabling type system. So we have it running, our cable running in one direction here. We have our structural support running in the other. And okay, now that we have this set up, we're looking pretty good. So I'm definitely liking how this is working for us. So, okay. At this rate, we could always just kind of pick up our settings here, and we could see how this looks when we start doing some more interesting geometry. So let's check this out when we do, say, like a corner type panel. So we'll check this now. So that looks pretty good. This section here, that could certainly use a little bit of work there to get that set up right, where maybe we need to simply go in and like adjust our scheme settings here. So we'll go into our edit, and let's see if we can adjust our scheme. We want to drag this over. Let's turn off everything but our scheme. So let's move that to the end. Okay. So exit edit mode. Okay, that actually looks pretty cool. We may need to go in and drop like a manual frame right there at the end. Or potentially we can just go in and add our same profile to our corner frame. So you can see once we set these up, we can do a lot of cool stuff with them. And let's go back in. We'll set this to our tube steel frame. We may need to adjust our offset on this one. But let's check and see how that looks. So yeah, I think we'd probably want to offset that maybe a little bit further back, but it doesn't look terrible, I must say. So okay, that's not bad. Of course, we could go in and we can make other adjustments here. We could adjust our pattern. Not our pattern. Let's go back to our scheme. Turn everything off again. We could pick a point and let's see. I just wanted to make an adjustment here. So I'm trying to get fancy. I'm going to probably screw it up, but I just wanted to make, maybe we got to select both of them at once. Oh, maybe I can't adjust that one. I thought I probably could, but maybe I can't. Okay, well, all right. Anyway, we're getting that kind of set up decently. Let's try a radius one. So, or we could just radius this, our original. So let's radius it out a bit. Set it right there. Go into 3D. We could always angle it a bit by, where's our angling setting? Slant angle, so it's not letting us right now. Let's undo that. Slant angle, we're at 90 degrees, so let's go say like 75 degrees, and we can see how that's starting to angle. And then after we do that, we can radius. So, oh, jump to section. But you can see once you get this set up, there's really kind of a lot that we can do with it. So that's interesting looking. Probably be better off setting up something radius like this in section where we can really go through and make the adjustments we need. So, okay, but nonetheless, we've now set up a spider frame curtain wall. So I hope you have learned some little tricks from this session here. And yeah, if you have any questions on how to set up this type of curtain wall frame system, then leave them in the comment section or suggest another type of tutorial, and I would love to come back and do another one, because just by looking at some of these images here that we had, Certainly there's a lot of other variations that we can do, and I would even love to expand this into like its own course on all different types of curtain wall systems. So if you'd be interested in that, then leave a comment in the comment section below, and we will definitely catch you here on another video. If you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, and we will catch you here very soon.